Hey, good morning from Kansas City, and welcome to SportsBeat Live, the weekly show where we talk about first-place baseball teams and the moves they make. Our conversation happens with the folks in the media who know the Royals best, beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnists Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. And with you, please send us your questions and comments and talk Royals with us. Hey, before we get started, let's take a moment to salute our sponsor, the University of Kansas Medical System. And good morning, guys.
Good morning, and happy Star Wars Day.
Yeah, what is that about? So ESPN's doing a game tonight where some announcers are dressed as Star Wars characters.
Oh, well, I wasn't even talking about ESPN. I was just, May the 4th, as in May the Force be with you.
Thank you very much. And that would explain ESPN's decision tonight. So anyway.
I didn't know that just having it be the 4th would make it Star Wars Day. But I think that our producer, Beth Welsh, is pretty into it based on the email she sent us to get this started.
All right. So, hey, it's always a special occasion for the Royals when somebody makes their major league debut. We've seen it over the years, right? The Royals tend to celebrate this occasion, and such was the case on Monday night when Daniel Lynch debuted. And big, tall, left-handed pitcher. I thought he pitched pretty well. Vahe, you were there. Let's just talk about his performance and the aftermath of Daniel Lynch, and then the circumstances that brought him to Kansas City. Let's talk about just last night, Vahe. How did he do, and what was his reaction?
I thought he did do pretty well, and he walked off with a 3-1 lead, and I think Royals Nation, both in the stands and on Twitter, was wanting him to stay in with 2 outs in the 5th and not turn it over to Barlow. But I think you can make a case either way, right? It's one of those things where whatever works out is the right answer. It didn't quite work out with the inherited run scoring, but look, I think he had a few things going on. No doubt he had jitters. The expression he used after the game was he was so juiced that he could barely see. I've never heard anybody put it quite that way, and it really struck me as pretty vivid explanation of what that might feel like. And that maybe that showed up on the very first pitch that got crushed to deep center field. And I happened to be watching that part of it with Joel Goldberg and Jeff Montgomery for a minute up by the TVs. And Jeff Montgomery, the great Royals pitcher, made a comment that his body language afterwards he thought was really good. He was kind of loose and laughing with Dozier. And later on, when I asked him about that, actually, he said that Gerard Dyson had told him he's playing center tonight, so just send them all out to me. And then I guess Dyson gave him some guff and said, I didn't mean the first pitch. But look, the broader point is he was in trouble a lot, or as Mike Matheny put it, a lot of stress. And he kept hanging in there. Had a couple really good fielding plays behind him and a couple lapses. And, it's just a shame that it wasn't a double play in the 5th. Whit Merrifield turned it, and the ball sailed on him a little, and that would have been the out, and he would have walked off with a 3-1 lead to keep. I think it was a pretty good outing. I know Sam was, I think, going to write something about him as well, and Sam was observing, and I know Lynn kind of goes back a little bit with him since you, I think, have spoken with him a number of times.
Yeah, going back to he's part of that infamous draft class, the 2018 class that has Brady Singer, Chris Bubich, Jackson Kowar himself, and then even if you go back, you go into the 3rd round of that draft, I believe is when they got Kyle Isbell. So 2018, obviously that draft class was a big group for them. But I talked to him a few years back. He's the one that sort of made the big leaps in terms of his velocity after they drafted him, and He's the one that Baseball America, MLB.com have as one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. A left-hander who throws upper 90s, who's got just ridiculous stuff that, you've heard guys in the big league club talking about him for a couple of years, whether that's Danny Duffy, just talking about this guy is nasty, like the first time you saw him in big league camp, or the guys who have had to face him. So, I thought it was interesting because, Dayton mentioned it a little bit on Sunday night when they made the announcement that, it sounded just the way Dayton was talking, like they were bringing him up now, but they were looking sort of long-term with him. And it was interesting because I got back yesterday from the road trip, and when I was driving back, I was listening on the radio, and JJ Picoult, the assistant GM, mentioned on the radio, he's talking to 610, that part of the thinking was also that they wanted to get him going now so that later in the season, hopefully they're playing games that are meaningful and, in contention. They don't want him sort of going through some of these growing pains and sort of feeling his way through things then. They want him to sort of already have hit his stride. And I thought that was interesting to hear him say that.
Yeah, look, not to be lost is that Daniel Lynch made his major league debut, the first week in May while the Royals are in first place, and not in August or September when, if that had happened in 2018 or 2019, the Royals would be 40 games out of first. It was a leverage moment for the Royals. And Lynn, I'm glad you brought up that he is ranked high in prospect rankings, and I think number 2 in the Royals organization behind Bobby Witt Jr. as well. So, I thought it was a solid debut for Daniel Lynch. And let's before we talk about the circumstances that brought him to Kansas City, let's hear from Daniel Lynch. This was in the post-game press conference last night.
Can you just describe the emotions that you felt going out there on the mound for the first time, especially in that first inning?
I felt like I could barely see. I was so juiced up, but I just really tried to take in the moment, and it was amazing. It's obviously the most people I've ever thrown in front of, the loudest the stadium's ever been after an out. I was so shocked at the first out how loud it was. But it was just a really amazing experience. I'm super thankful.
Alec? After you could start to see again, how did you think it went as a whole?
If I'm being picky, I didn't feel like I had my best stuff. I don't feel like I commanded my fastball as well as I wanted to, but I was really happy with the way I battled and competed. And that's the most fun I've had competing in a baseball game in a long time. And I thought that was what I was really happy with. Like, it didn't go smoothly. But I kept us in it, and I felt like I competed really well.
Right.
Daniel, just along the lines of what you're saying, that first pitch, it looked like you were either talking to yourself or Hunter right after it, but having a little bit of a light moment with it too. You just recall what you said and what that felt like to get that out of the way that way?
Dyson told me before the game that he's playing center and to send him out his way. He said, I didn't mean the first guy, and hopefully I didn't really mean to let him hit it that hard, but I'm glad he was out there. So, it's just, you get the first one out of the way, you can kind of take a deep breath. And, but it was, we were just joking about that.
Good stuff from Daniel Lynch. Sam, haven't heard from you yet. Did you watch it? And what did you think of Daniel Lynch?
I did. And everything he said, I thought that was perfect, because I think that's what we all saw, right? Like, guys are going to be nervous. Like, I mean, can you imagine you work your entire life and now you get this moment and you're finally, it's your dream, and you're living it in real life. So you're going to be nervous. But I don't know how many times I've seen a guy that just visibly, the breathing, remember, it was crazy. And he was still, and everything he said there was exactly on point. I don't know if it's confirmation bias on my part, but like his fastball, he couldn't command it. He was missing the strike zone by 2, 3, 4, 5 inches on a lot of those pitches. But you can see everything in that outing was sort of what we've been told Daniel Lynch is. I mean, you can see like when he's on, I mean, there's like potential no hit kind of stuff from him when he's on, when that slider is sweeping through, and the change up and or curveball, just get a little bit better to give him a third pitch, so it's not just the that Andrew Miller sort of Randy Johnson big lefty fastball slider combination. Like he's going to have some no hit kind of nights, I think. And I also love what he said about competing, because we talk so much about just like stuff and the technical parts of pitching, but some of it is just sort of what you've got in here, and we talk all the time about Brady Singer like that, right? Like super hyper competitive guy. I think Chris Bubich has a lot of that in him as well. That guy's kind of a baseball version of a warrior. And I think like Daniel Lynch, it was cool to see him in those moments and kind of rise to that occasion. Look, I don't know how much of that fastball command stuff was just how nervous he is, right, in that moment, and how much of it was just something we'll see from him. But God, if he's off, and when he leaves the mound, he's 4 1/3 and he's giving up 1 run at that point. If that's his off day, they really got something. You know what I mean? And look, like pitchers have the advantage when it's when they're new. Pitchers always have that advantage. So he's got to shore some stuff up. But you can it's just the other thing I think. And I'm sorry, I'm like this is Carmelo as Therese would say right now. But the other thing that sticks out to me about this is you mentioned it, Blair, but they're in first place. This is a team that can get more talented as the season goes along. They just added a guy with that talent. They're going to add Bobby Witt Jr. fairly soon. They've got some other guys that are coming up. Mondesi will get healthy eventually. It's an interesting thing. They're in first place, haven't played as well as they can, and are going to get more talented. It's a really interesting time for the Royals right now.
Hey, just one quick aside, because I felt compelled to text this to Sam last night. Those nerves can go a lot of different ways in an opener, and I was trying to remember who it was that had just such a wretched first start. It was Sam reminded me it was Aaron Brooks some years ago, and as I recall, I hope we wrote this that there was a Royals executive who had fought hard to get him that start, and when the start went awry, he's known to have said, "Oops."
Well, yeah. Well, the story was that he said that he did the old, the bang on the table thing, right? And he said because there was a debate between Aaron Brooks and I forgot the other guy, and our unnamed executive banged on the table, and he said, "Look, I don't know if Aaron Brooks is going to go, 8 innings and give up 1 run with 10 strikeouts, but I can tell you this: he's not going to S the bed. He's not just going to." And he ended up going like 1 inning, gave up like 10 runs or something like that. And our executive just goes, "Whoops."
My bad.
That one's on me.
What had happened was.
Oh gosh. All right, we're actually going to hear from Dayton Moore a little bit later in the show, and it is the question that you asked him yesterday, Sam. I thought he gave a really interesting answer about that. Okay, so Ron Daniel asks what about Jacob Junis, disgruntled? So that perfect transition into the circumstances that led to the Daniel Lynch start. So what do we think about this, Lynn? Jacob Junis started the season right in the bullpen because the Royals didn't need a 5th starter until about 2 weeks in. Jacob Junis took over that spot and pitched pretty darn well. I think just 1 bad inning really in his 4 starts, but 3.80 ERA, had 24 Ks in 21 1/3 innings. And over the weekend, while you guys were up in Minneapolis, you got the word that he was going back. He was going to the bullpen. Look, the Royals need help in the pen, right, because of injuries. But still, I was, he said all the right things. But when he was asked about this, but one of the things he also said was he was surprised that he got this assignment. What do you make of this?
Well, in spring training, I think he came out. Well, I know he came out and said when we asked it, he wanted to be a starter, and he sort of earned that right with what he did in spring training and through the first couple of starts of this season. And obviously he's somewhat remade himself with the cutter, and he pitched well. He pitched well as a starter. And I'm sure fans will point to a guy like Brad Keller and say, so that's the guy that you're going to keep running out there, and this is the guy you're going to go to the bullpen. Well, Junis also proved that he could pitch out of the bullpen, and they feel like he could pitch in spots that they're going to need guys, because you got Zimmer down, you got Hahn down, and Matheny has already talked about not wanting to run some of these guys into the ground, whether that's Barlow or Stalmont or Holland. And so you need somebody else that you can trust, and that they don't feel like there's guys in the minors that they're ready to pull up and say, okay, we're going to throw you into leverage situations. They just don't have that right now. So Junis is that guy. They trust him. And again, when they put him in the bullpen at the beginning of the season, he sort of said the right things and took it in stride. Again, knowing that he probably earned the right to get some starts, and then he did get those starts and he performed well, and now he's going back to the bullpen. So he's saying the right things again. But I think ultimately, what they're selling him on and what he is trying to buy into is the fact that he could help them win at a high level out of the bullpen, and they could still have somebody start who's going to potentially help them win too. And so overall, it makes them a better pitching staff.
Well, he returned to the bullpen in last night's game, and look, there were some strange things that happened. Vahe mentioned earlier the double play that wasn't turned. That wasn't when Junis was on the mound, right? That was Daniel Lynch. But when Junis was on the mound, looks like he got squeezed a little bit, and he came in when it was 3-3, right? Barlow had thrown a wild pitch. Single brought in 2 runs to make it 3-3, and then in comes Junis. He gives up a couple of home runs. I don't know if his head was in the right place or if he was thinking about the events of the last 24, 48 hours, but it wasn't the best of Junis that we saw last night.
His slider
Go ahead, Sam.
They called it a cement mixer, right? I mean, his slider was spinning, but it wasn't breaking. I mean, it was just hanging right up there, and it got hammered. And there's no way to know, right, without getting into his head about, was that because I think he's pissed off. Like I just like when they brought him out, and kudos to the Royals for doing that. But I thought it was pretty clear that this is a guy that when he's talking to his buddies, he's really pissed off about what just happened. But he's enough of an adult and a good teammate, all those things, enough to, at least say verbally the right things. But I thought it was pretty obvious. And I don't know if there's connection there, right? Like, we don't know. It could be a coincidence, but that slider, it just wasn't. That thing was hanging up there. Those 2 home runs deserve to get hit.
It was interesting because there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, fan fussing last night over his strike zone. And he did get squeezed a little bit. But I thought that he didn't get squeezed as many times as people seem to think. And I do suppose with the way the Royals do things, I would fully expect that before the game, he might have been told to be ready, because you don't really know what's going to happen in the guy's first major league start. But I would think that would be an odd thing. Like, we're not starting you, but we want you to be ready. I think that could be odd. So, like Sam said, hard to be in his head, but I'm not sure he was gruntled. Let's put it that way.
Well, I wonder if he gave one of those sighs like Blair gave a couple minutes ago, because Blair had that sigh after I started giving him this is what I think is going on, and Blair gave the sigh that said, I'm not buying. If he let out one of those sighs, and that explains that outing last night, I guess. Because that was all right.
Well, I guess my question is, based on results of April and a day or two into May, did the right guy go to the bullpen?
Well,
did the right starting pitcher go to the bullpen?
I think, and I'm not saying before we get another sigh, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I think it's clear that they've made the decision that they're going to stick with Keller no matter what. If that's what people, just going by social media and that sort of stuff, that's what people think they ought to do, they're not doing it. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure I asked Dayton Moore yesterday, just about what their confidence level is with Keller, and that they sort of have a handle on what's been behind his inconsistencies. And he sort of answered and didn't answer at the same time. I think he actually did. I mean, I think if you read into it, basically he said Keller's got to be better, the defense has got to be better, and that they still believe in him. I mean, he basically, that's what it boils down to. I mean, he didn't say that it was, he didn't put it all on the defense, he didn't put it all on Keller, but he basically said that it's a combination of all that has to be better, but that they believe in him and that they're not worried and they're going to keep running him out there.
It makes sense. I think that they feel more confident in Junis being in the bullpen than they do Keller. I think that part of it makes sense. And Keller's been really terrible, a couple times, but there's also been some times where he's run into some bad luck, like Lynn just said. And that defense thing is real, and it's especially real for him because he's not a strikeout pitcher. He pitches to contact, a lot of ground balls, and so that stuff matters a lot for him, and it matters more than it does for other guys. And when Mondesi comes back and plays shortstop, they're going to get significantly better at both of the middle infield positions. That's a huge deal because, Nicky Lopez is a really good second baseman, but he's getting exposed at shortstop, I think. Like, he's just a little bit overmatched, as far as big league shortstop. So they'll get, an above average, I don't know, top 10 defensive shortstop in Mondesi, something like that. I think we can say that. And then, the same deal at second base. So that'll be a bigger deal for Keller than it is for some other guys.
We're assuming that Nicky's going back to second in your scenario there, right? Is that what you're assuming there, or are you talking about Witt?
Yeah, I mean, Lopez at second is what, in my scenario, but you're right.
That's
Yep.
Well, that's what the other question that I asked that, we really didn't quite get an answer to because they're not going to, they don't have to make that decision yet. So They won't. Yeah. But that was, so what's the plan going to be with Nicky? Because we know he was going to be in the minors and now he's come up and played well. And they, basically the thing is what he's done so far is the sorts of things that, this offseason Dayton and, Mike Matheny talked about. If he can do this, we could have him at second base, right, especially if Mondesi is giving them something more than, not what they got that first month of last year, but he's giving more than that. Nicky's giving them what he's giving them now, then they can roll with that in the middle of the infield. And so Nicky's been giving you that. But at this point, you've also had Witt there, and you sort of set things with Witt being at second. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out if you're going to put Witt back in the outfield and how that's going to go. And I still think, and I mentioned this before, I still think that at the point when Bobby Witt comes up, I think they're still looking more towards third base and moving Dozier around than, second or short, which that was originally what I thought. And then once we saw spring training so much second base, I thought, well, maybe not. But I think that's going to be still going to be the plan. Is he's going to be, from what I understand, short and third is what he's going to be looking at in the minors. So I think when he comes up, the idea is that he probably go third more likely, and then be moving Dozier around.
All right, we're going to take a break here, guys. And as we go to break, I will note to self, pay attention to the audible sighs.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Okay, we're talking first place Royals with Lynn Worthy, Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian. And on Monday, we heard from Royals general manager Dayton Moore. We understand that's, we usually, have access to Dayton Moore when we are covering games and have access to the clubhouse and dugout. That's still not the case in the COVID world. So Dayton was kind enough to join reporters for more than 20 minutes on Monday. And I thought it was pretty interesting. Sam, you asked this question. Let's hear from Royals general manager Dayton Moore.
You guys have always had a good start, but one of the things that I hear people say a lot is sort of, they're 16-10, whatever the record is, but they can still be better. Just curious, I assume you agree with that, other than getting your shortstop back, right? Like, what are the ways that you see that happening over the next 5 months of the season?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need to continue to develop from within. That's why I'm really looking forward to the minor league starting. I mean, the way this thing's trending right now, we're going to need more pitching. We're going to need more depth, throughout the year. I believe we have that. Internally, we don't have enough roster spots because the roster from a talent level is at a pretty high level actually right now, we feel, and there's not a lot of room to add guys, but there'll have to be some tough decisions that we're going to make along the way. Again, being able to utilize Hunter Dozier and Whit Merrifield in those versatile roles is going to be really important for our depth. And as we go forward, I mean, just the mindset and the attitude of Jake Junis is a great predictor to where these 26 men are right now, with expecting to win and wanting to win, with the mindset that they'll perform in any role that we ask them to do for the good of the team. And so I think there's a lot of positives in our group. And I've been asked quite a bit over the last couple of weeks about the start of our team, and I sum it up the following way. I mentioned, Mike Matheny, the great work that he and the coaching staff do each and every day, and the fact that we got winning players. We got players that know how to win, been a part of winning teams in the past. They develop a sense, an instinct, a feel, a belief on how the game's going to go sometime within the first 3 innings, and they start anticipating what they're going to have to do over the next 6-7 innings to win the game. And so when they're put in that situation, they're prepared for it. And that comes with experience, where a lot of young guys are just, inning to inning, and they're just trying to kind of hang on a little bit and try to do a little something and survive. I mean, this group of players have, they've been around for a little bit, and they've got a pretty good feel of what they're going to have to do to win that baseball game a couple innings in advance. And so, but, we're going to need to clean some stuff up. We're putting the ball in play at a much higher rate, which is good. We still chase a little bit. We're going to have to improve on that, take our walks, win the 3-2 counts. The interior defense, we're going to get a lot better there as we go forward. I believe in that. As I said before, I see great signs in Hunter Dozier and Jorge Soler. I mean, they're about ready to break out. And the important thing is we have several guys in our lineup that have the ability to carry us, not only for one game, but for a week and even a month. And, we'll get all those guys going at one point in time, and we won't have a good month. We'll have a great month. And so, that's the way I see it. But again, Sam, I mean, when you look at, and I think there's probably 27 or 28 other teams, maybe all 29, looking at their pitching staff, their rotations, and their bullpens, and knowing that, there's 5 more months to go, and then hopefully a postseason. And so we're going to need a lot more depth.
Not a good month, but a great month, maybe, in store for the Royals. But it's not off to a great start, that's for sure. Takeaways from that, I thought there were some interesting, the way he framed the Jacob Junis attitude. I love the idea of winning 3-2 counts, taking walks when they're there. It seems like the Royals have done that much better this year than in years past, and can still improve in that area. What was your big takeaway from this, Sam?
Yeah, I thought what I heard, and over the years, I think we've all developed a fluency in Dayton, and my translation there is basically 3 things: the develop from within. He said that early, and I think that means all these minor league guys coming up and transitioning, and that because of 60 games last year to 162, and you're depending on a lot of guys that have never played 162 game season, there's going to be a lot of up and down, and the pitching staff, all those innings are going to have to be divided among more people. So it's starting with Daniel Lynch, and then there's going to be more coming. The other thing I heard him say was they got to clean some stuff up defensively. I think this is a good defensive team. Some of that, Mondesi again, he's going to make them better defensively. But, Mondesi's not going to change Hunter Dozier, the other day in Minnesota. Like that stuff just has to clean up. And then the other thing I heard with the it's not just Hunter Dozier. It's there's some other guys. Salvi, he gets lazy sometimes on some balls in the dirt and just moves his glove instead of moving his body. The little things like that. And the other thing, that 3-2 count thing. What I hear him saying there is that they're not the Dodgers, right? They don't have just an overwhelming level of talent, and so their path to win has to be clean like that. Take an extra base. Turn in double plays, all those things, like the Rays. They need to be, a little bit more like the Rays. Those are the three. What I heard was those are the three things he was emphasizing.
That 3-2 count thing came in. What comes in handy in games like last night when you got a strike zone that was kind of a little bit odd. I don't know. That press conference was happened obviously before Monday's game, and some of the things that he was not, that they talk about cleaning up occurred in that game, right? I thought Salvi did get a little lazy on that pass ball, and Indians ended up walking more than the Royals did, and there is a less of a margin for error for a Royals team like this, and there are for bigger budget teams, but. What April's proven to us, hasn't it, that when they do the right things, this team can be competitive and have a chance. And they're still in first place, 16-11 now, in a critical stretch of their critical, right, is early, but there's 17 straight games against American League Central teams right now. So who knows where they got started off poorly, losing 2 out of 3 from the Twins, and then dropping the first game to Cleveland, but they got the White Sox, the Indians, the Tigers still in front of them for this 17 game stretch. I wanted to, before we left today, I wanted to bring up the fact that it's as Vahe reminded us, May the 4 be with you. It's the 4th of May, and it's the first day of minor league baseball in 2 years. Right. There has not been minor league baseball played in a couple of years. And the minor league baseball that's starting today is different. At least the structure and the system is different than what we remember from 2 years ago. Lynn Worthy covered minor league baseball much more recently than I did. I go back into the early 1980s. I know Sam and Vahe never covered minor league baseball. But Lynn and I have been out to those ballparks. Wow. And Lynn, you've been covered several teams in several leagues. It's just going to be a different world, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean it's obviously fewer teams, and I mean there's a certain part of me that's just obviously not happy about seeing some places lose teams. I mean, I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts area, and to see, they're they've had a team. I remember when that team got put in there, and for them not to have a team this year, obviously, is something that, not going to pretend I'm happy about. But at the same time, to be fair, I think one of the reasons they've talked about doing this was to upgrade certain things for players, whether that's travel, facilities, and all that. So, I mean, in that way, I would like to think that it's a good thing. But it's going to be different. It's just going to be different to not have some of the leagues that you had before. Whether that's, like I covered the New York Penn League, I covered the Eastern League, for a brief time, helped out covering International League, and then the Pacific Coast League. And so there was a certain, there was, whether it's a rhythm or just a personality to some of these places. And now a lot of that's up in the air. A lot of that's going to be gone because teams are, AA teams that, were short season teams before. And so everything's different. And I think maybe in time, we'll sort of get used to this, and fan bases maybe will latch on to some of these affiliates. But yeah, it's going to be different. Again, if it's better for the players, then that's a good thing. But for right now, it's just not going to quite feel the same.
Yeah, a lot of jobs lost, right? I mean, every major league team has 4 affiliates, and back in 2019, teams had anywhere from 7 to 9. You mentioned the New York Penn League, the Appalachian League, where I've seen some games, covered some games way back in the day. That's become a wood bat college league now. Hopefully that those small towns in that part of the country, or wherever minor league baseball has disappeared, that there's alternatives for those teams and those communities. It is a big part of a lot of small communities in the country. The Royals, of course, are in Omaha, Northwest Arkansas, Davenport, Iowa, the Quad Cities team, and then Columbia, right? Columbia, South Carolina. Is that it?
Yeah. And so, you see, I follow, or I have followed a little bit just through social media. Like I know, like Lexington doesn't have a team anymore, is an affiliated team, but they're doing sort of the independent ball route. And it sounds like they've been pretty creative with sort of like making the roster more regional and trying to really, make it sort of a local attraction and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, there's teams that are trying to make it work. It's just going to be different. And then, Nick, you mentioned, losing jobs. Some of these places just, they don't have teams. A lot of people don't have the job that they had. And there's going to be players who lose jobs too, because there's going to be there's a cap now on number of minor leaguers. And, we talked to JJ Piccolo last week, and he was talking about just, there's going to be some guys they're going to have multiple Arizona League teams this year because you only have those 4 affiliates. They'll probably still have multiple Dominican teams. But there's going to be a cap on the number of players you have. And so as you go through the season, there may be guys that they get cut where you used to be able to stash them here or there and find places for them. You won't be able to do that anymore either.
I hate it. Like, can I just go on a quick
I was trying to be fair, and then Sam comes in with Carmelo comes in with let me take this shot.
This is gonna be my second Therese reference here, because this is like an old man baseball rant. Because I hate it for everything that Lynn just said. First of all, I'm dubious about like the upgrades that are coming. Like I think this is a cost cutting move. And I'm dubious about like if this is going to be better for the players that are in there, but it's fewer opportunities for players to develop. And Dayton put this beautifully last fall or whatever, of like, the guys that top out at A-ball or AAA or whatever become junior college coaches or clinics and all. And there's going to be fewer of those now. There's fewer connections to the game, and not just that for players, but all these communities that are used to having teams. For a lot of people, that don't live in cities, that have Major League Baseball, that's their connection. Then it's all over the country. And that's how kids can grow up and be attracted to baseball and see the fun in baseball. And for Major League Baseball to just sort of be chopping that off is self-defeating. And it goes along with, the blackout restrictions and all these other things. And it drives me crazy that baseball is doing this to itself. It is actively limiting the number of connections that it can make with fans, with potential customers, and all those things. I hate it. I hate it.
I certainly wouldn't try to top that, and I'll just say that the best observation I can make here is it was a joy watching Stockton go to Mello there.
I was just going to add, back in the day when I was going to Mackin sites a lot in the winter, it's unbelievable how many minor league players would be in there holding camps for kids, right? Little, from the smallest kids up through high school age kids. They were all being guided by, over the Christmas holidays, right, or over the holiday period. They're, minor league players would be in there picking up a few bucks and teaching the kids. So to what extent that we lose that, well, I guess time will tell. But the population of amateur baseball is going to decrease because of this ruling. So, okay, guys, great conversation as always with Lynn Worthy, Vahe Gregorian, and Sam Mellinger. Thanks to the University of Kansas Health System. Thank you, Beth Welsh, and thanks for those who tuned in and commented. And we'll be back next Tuesday, talking Royals on SportsBeat Live.